Grace and peace are yours. You are children of God, loved and saved by Jesus. This is Pastor Paul Steinberg, and you found the Christ for Disciplers podcast, where 10 minutes each weekday we apply God's word to ourselves and our roles for discipling the next generation. This week, looking at David and Goliath. How much are you like your parents? Maybe a lot. Maybe you'll look a lot like them. They have programs nowadays where you can take two pictures and blend them together, and sometimes oh boy, people look just like the blend, and sometimes it look just like their dad, it look just like their mom. I look just like my mom. People have seen old pictures of my mom, and they say, "Oh, you look just like her." Not something I was happy to hear as a teenager, but even more so, I act like my parents in different ways. Now, I'm not like my father at all on the outside. I'm just like him on the inside. I'm like him around my kids and around my wife, but I'm not. My job is completely different. He was a factory worker. He was a quiet mouse of a guy who never outwardly volunteered at church or people saw him. He didn't do those things. He was just quiet. His nickname was Mouse, and I'm very different from that, more like my mom in some ways, but still different and unique. And my brother is different from me, similar in a lot of ways, but different in a lot of ways. We aren't little like cookie cutters of them. And my brother and I don't do the same jobs that they did, and we don't function in the same way that they did. And that's a good thing. How much are your children like you? The children in your family, maybe they have some characteristics. You can see some things, but you can't force it, right? You look at my wife and I love music. We met in a marching band, hoping with our 6 kids that maybe we'd have some musicians, and none of them really play instruments. They dabbled in it. They tried it. We encouraged them to do different things, but it never was their thing. Instead, most of them all went for screens and technology, which were more available and could do so many more things than when I was a kid. Band was my thing, but it's really not for my kids. They didn't follow in my job. They liked some of the things I liked. I can see some of their math and technology. That's, I've heard me talk about how back in the day I was the computer nerd who had a Radio Shack computer, 16K extended basic. Oh man, extended basic. And now 16K is nothing. It's not even close to 1 gazillionth of what I have on my phone. It's nothing, but I was on the cutting edge, but that faded away. And they went into different things. And I don't last. I can't play the games but my wife, oh man, she's a gamer all the way. And then a lot of common with her. And so it's a joy. I think it's a joy as a parent to see those connections. It's even a joy as a teacher to see children when they, to see something that they're interested in or they have a gift for that matches you. That's kind of cool and fun. And often you get that extra connection with people that maybe will fall into that same vocation that you have or have some of the same hobbies. And that's good. Let that affinity go. But where there could be issues is if you try to make them, or even you see a tendency and then you try to make them be just like you or replace you or be that way. That doesn't make them happy. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't help the people they're serving. You got to let them be who they are, but still guide them and disciple them and mold them, adjust them. But be careful, especially if they're your kids, not to emotionally try to get them to be you. In the account of David beating Goliath, before he goes and does that, Saul tried to make David be a warrior like him in his style. But it wasn't going to work, and David knew not to do it. And it was successful David's way. Let me read from 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning at verse 38. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. And David strapped his sword over his armor. And he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. So David put them off. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. It made sense for Saul to think, you're going to take on the guy with all that, armor and the big 9-foot tall Goliath. So here, take my stuff. It was like a generous idea. It was a good thought. And David even gave it a try, but he's like, this is clunky. I'm strapped in. It's maybe if I had some time to work on it. You picture a young little guy, a 40-year-old guy versus a 20-year-old guy. Normally a 40-year-old's clothes are going to be bigger. And Saul as the king probably ate a lot better than David did. I don't know. But regardless, he had never even tried them. That wasn't his style. Not going to go with it. So he took it off, and David went his style, right? He got his staff, his pouch, his stones, and it was him. Because the power really wasn't the sword or the armor. It was going to be the Lord anyway. It was ridiculous. You couldn't trust the outfit to do it, because even in that outfit, even if he was a trained soldier, probably every soldier in that army would have lost to Goliath. It wouldn't have mattered. But David did it his way. The application we can take for us personally, first of all, is that we need to do and serve our God the way God has made us in our style. In other words, when we look at how we parent or how we teach or coach, we can learn something from everybody, but we don't need to be like them, and things change, and we're not the same person, and teams and times change. So we have to be comfortable with who we are. We don't need to change to be hip or dress the way kids dress or be their way or be all the way in technology. Check those things out, use the tools, but sometimes you just got to stop and be who you are. I mean, my mom has not switched over to the internet. She's doing fine. Why? Because that's her. She hasn't tested them. She's not used to it. So she can just be her way. And for you, if you're a paper and pencil person and you don't text or whatever, it's going to be tough. But maybe that's just not you. And so to make your kids or the next generation try to be like you is a dangerous thing as well, because God made them, first of all, to be different individuals, but it's different times. You want to look at the kids and get to know them and understand they're not you. And this is not when you were a kid. Things have really changed quite a bit since the world was put in people's pockets with the phone. It's a different deal. It's probably the biggest switch. And so if you're trying to make your kids be just like you were when you were 16 and do the things you did, it's probably not going to be successful. It's just plain different. But don't keep hands off. Still be involved. And let them do it their way. Let them try it their way. Jesus, as he grew up, he was the perfect himself. There was no one ever like him, and we don't know that much about his personality because that's not important. But when he got his team around him, he got his disciples. And God gives us more of a glimpse at the disciples' personalities and strengths and weaknesses. They were all different. They had different political backgrounds, different age backgrounds, different upbringing, different sins on different sides. They're all different. And he didn't make them all be like Peter or all be like John. I mean, John seemed like the best one to me. Jesus' best friend and the one that seems to always do the right thing and live the longest and wrote a bunch of... everyone should be like John, but Jesus knew that wasn't right. John should be John. Peter needed to be Peter and be that... and they needed a little bit of brash guy that might need some correcting. He even called Paul at the right time to be the right person. They could all be different, and they could all serve, no matter what way it was. And for us to rejoice that our kids are themselves, and we help them unlock their vocation and gifts and serve the Lord in their unique way, in their unique time. We all need forgiveness for how we fall short, to use our current situations. We have that in Jesus, and we can thank our God for that. Thanks for taking 600 seconds so Christ doesn't take second in your life or the life of your kids. A reminder that this podcast, Christ for Disciplers, is on all kinds of different podcast feeds. So pass this on to your friends and family, to your fellow teachers. Invite them to join the Christ for Disciplers podcast family. And send me any questions, thoughts, or comments to pastorsteinberg@gmail.com. God's blessings. The Lord bless you and keep you. Amen. Christ for Disciplers is a ministry of A City for God. Please visit us at acityforgod.org to learn more. God's blessings.